was consult to the movie with Hollywood, the movie production Fury, the movie, if you've ever seen that movie. He said he had the opportunity to meet Brad Pitt, who starred in the movie. I think Brad Pitt had the opportunity to meet Paul Andert. Anyway, as you read his books, you'll be fascinated by many of his experiences. The last one he wrote, I think this is book number 8, is the 24 times I almost got it. He talks about some of the experiences he had and the near-death experiences that he had fighting in World War II. He's now writing his 9th book. He is 94 and a half years old. When I grow up, I want to be just like you, Paul. So with that, I'm going to introduce to you our guest speaker today, an American hero. Please join me in welcoming Paul Andert.
I always started out by standing up, and I usually make it. The other day I was at Jenks High School, and I was stood up for an hour and a half, and suddenly when they said the time's up and we could go home, I couldn't move because my right leg went to sleep and I couldn't move it. But anyway, we don't have a lot of time, as you know. I made some notes and felt like that what we could talk about would be probably one of the best things that I thought can you hear me all right? I just don't know how far to put the microphone. And I thought maybe one of the good things that I could do was to mention sayings that I was told by different people, some of them very famous during the war and that, and explain a little bit about each one of those sayings if we will see how much of it we could get in. And I got hearing aids in, but I don't hear that good with them. And I guess that as you get older, you find out that each day there's something else different. And one of them, my pants keep falling down because I'm buttoned up and tied high enough. So anyway, we'll start off one of the things that excuse me while I pull this out here. I wanted to start with one of the most famous people that I ever met, and I met him twice, and that was Winston Churchill. And I met him at the Casablanca Conference in January of '43, and I met him at Tilworth Garrison in England before the invasion when he came to visit us. And his favorite saying, of course, was never quit or never give up, either one. And to me, he was the greatest man of the century, because if he didn't stand up and fight for his people and with his people, we could have had the war over with before we even got in it. And so he was, and a lot of Americans, as you know, became British. They volunteered to serve it with the British. A lot of the Air Force guys left the U.S. and went over there, and they flew for the Britons. And so we were involved long before Pearl Harbor. I was in a year and a half before Pearl Harbor, so I was considered regular Army. But anyway, Winston Churchill, never give up. And the other one I always never forgot was never one man alone. And that was one of the favorite things he had to say always was never one man alone. And some of the guys would tell him in the peacetime when we were at Fort Benning, Georgia, they would say, well, what happens if you stop the guy? And he says, well, if I stop the guy by himself, he's really had it. But if I stop 2 of you, they said, then what happens? He says, well, the man with the lowest serial number is in charge. There's always somebody in charge. There's always 2 men, 2 and 1's in charge. Always remember that. And so when he said that, it came back to me in later time during the Siegfried Line in Germany, during the Battle of the Siegfried Line, which we lasted 16 days in rain, thunder, lightning, artillery fire, both were, and a lot of mud and all of that. And we were involved in all of that, and they asked us to go out and, for me, to send a patrol out to no man's land to see what's going on out there. And of course, in today's deal, the no man's land doesn't apply very well. But in those days, of course, the Germans had their fortifications, we had ours, and in between was no man's land. And so we were to find out what was going on out there. Another saying came to mind right then is Patton always said, you never push spaghetti, you got to pull it. Because if you try to push spaghetti, it'll just wall up. But if you get in front, you can pull it and it'll go everywhere you want it to go. And that's who a leader is. He's the man that pulls the spaghetti. So anyway, I had that habit of, well, I'll pull the spaghetti. So I did it as many times. But this time I picked another fellow and we went out to no man's land and we're out there. And a German patrol was out there also. So I had him be real quiet while they went on through. And after they passed, I turned to this young fellow and I said, let's continue now. And we were putting up booby traps is what we were doing. And so he was gone. I was by myself. And so I thought to myself, well, I could put out a couple more traps and then I'll go in. And then suddenly it came to me, never one man alone. So I said, what the hell am I doing here? So I decided to get out of there. So I started out. Number 1, another saying that was always given to us. We all make mistakes, but the one that makes the less mistakes wins. That's war. That's the way it is. It's full of mistakes. But you make the less, you could win. And so we're out there, and I'm out there with trying to see what I was going to do, and I decided, hell, I'm going to get out of here. So instead of going back in the same way I came out, and all you soldiers know this, if you're in a deal that you're out on reconnaissance or something, you always go back into the same area that you went out so that they will know that you were out there. I didn't do that. I made another mistake. I started straight back. And as I started straight back, the tanks that were in a defilade position started firing their machine guns because they heard people out there. And it was me. And I started hollering, cease fire, cease fire. Here's no man's land. I'm hollering, cease fire. And so when I got up to the tanks, one of the tankers got out and he said, what the hell are you doing? And I said, didn't they tell you we were out here? And he said, no. That's another rule. They always pass on down the line that there's somebody out there. And the word didn't get all the way down, so they didn't know I was out there or there was anybody out there. So anyway, those are never one man alone, make the fewest mistakes. All of that came back to me. These were things that most of it came from Patton as time went on. You know, we called him blood and guts. And the reason we called him that, we always said, yeah, it's our blood and his guts. Because he was always, forcing you to move, never stay still. And another famous saying he had, always move. And the reason you move is because a moving target is a lot harder to hit than a stationary target. And that's another rule of war, is move, move, move. And there was cases that we couldn't move when we were stuck in a defensive position, particularly in the Siegfried Line in Germany, where we were stuck there for 16 days, and we couldn't move because they had us zeroed in on, and the military men know what I mean by I say zeroed in. They had us zeroed in, so we couldn't move, and and it was then that another thing happened that suddenly came to mind, and it isn't in the notes. I had a guy that was part of my outfit, and we called him Dynamite Dean. And the reason we called him that, he was always jumping on enemy vehicles and trying to start them. And I always had to preach to him, you don't do that. That may be booby-trapped and you blow us up. And he used to, and he'd tell me, he said, what are you complaining about? He says, because if it was booby-trapped, you and I'd both be dead. You know, so what we did with him is we had him always in his squad, the third squad, my third squad. I was platoon sergeant. I had 48 men in there. He was in the third squad, and it was called the demolition squad. And they carried a certain amount of TNT with them, and so they put the TNT on him and had him follow them, say 30 yards behind us. So don't get in there with us. So that was Dynamite Dean. So during the Siegfried Line deal, what happened to him, he got buried in the mud when one of our tanks backed up. Just before that, his squad leader was killed, and he was a sergeant. He was private first class. And I said, you're in charge of the take over the squad. He says, I don't want a bid. I don't want that. And I said, he says, I'm just a sergeant. I mean, a private first class. And I said, well, I make you a sergeant. Get in there and get up there and take over the squad. So he went over there behind the tank that his squad was there. And the Germans opened up, and the tank suddenly threw in reverse and backed up and hit him and buried him in mud. And the mud was real heavy there. And so right away when it happened, I looked and I said to myself, he's dead. So I turned him in as killed in action. Now, about 10 months later in St. Louis after the war, I heard the doorbell rang, and I lived upstairs. I run down the stairs. I opened the door, and Dynamite Dean stood there. And I said, what in the hell are you doing here? I said, you're supposed to be dead. Those were the exact words I used. And he said, well, let me show you. And he opened his shirt up, and he said, see that? I got tank tracks on his chest. And he did have tank tracks on his chest. He said, and I got silver knuckles on my backbone. And he said, what happened? He said, when they come up to take the bodies out and all that, they said, we'll pick him up last. He's done for. He says, I heard that, and when I heard it, I started moving in the mud. And they say, hey, wait a minute, he's alive. So they pulled me out, and he spent 6 months in the hospital. But the miracle of all of this is he introduced me to the girl I married that night. He was saved for a reason, and that was to get me the right gal that I had for 67 years. So I got off the target, but I hadn't mentioned that one because it turned out to be, you know, very, very important, and he was quite a boy. And I got him in the new book I'm writing now. And and another favorite word that Patton always used for us, he says, never die for your country, let the other BS die for his country. And that was his rule. Shoot first. Always shoot first. And he says the reason you shoot first is because if you don't, the other guy's going to shoot you and you'll be dead. So you shoot first. Then, if he can still talk, ask him who he was if you want to. And one of the rules today that some of the Marines were telling me recently is that after so many times that they had to keep calling in for permission to shoot, when they were finally told to shoot, they were told to shoot low. And they said, why? Well, they said, you wouldn't be shooting to kill, you'd be disabling them. They said, but what if I shot a man in the leg and he had a rifle in his hand, that wouldn't keep him from shooting me. So why in the hell would you give an order out like that to shoot low? And this Marine, he told me that just recently at the Marine Mall, that's what they were told. And so anyway, dying for your country. Shoot first and ask afterwards. Kill or be killed. And that's another thing. I got getting off the target again. One of the things that they decided to find out, the War Department did, or the Defense Department is called now, is to why the young people were put in the infantry. And here, these 4 generals that were involved, and I don't know how much they knew, but here's what they came up with. They came up with the fact that the young fellows were put in the infantry because when you're down there at 18, 19, and 20 years old, you don't think twice. You fire. If you were 26, which they were considered as an older person at that time, if they put those kind of guys in the infantry, they would stop and say, well, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? They said, we don't have time in wars to say, should I or shouldn't I? We just have to do it. And so that's why the youngsters were put in the infantry. I thought that was a very interesting analogy, and but that's what they decided on. That was about 5 years ago. Okay. General Patton was never wrong. He was always right. And that was according to him. He was always right. And one of the things that I could mention very quickly, he would hold inspections on Saturday at Fort Benning, and surprise inspection, and one time he did it to our company. And when he did it, they told us he was going to do it, he's coming, and so fall out, and I had a guy from New York that was really a slob, and not that all New Yorkers are slobs, but this was one. And so I had him, I said, go to the latrine, that's the toilet, or whatever the hell you want to call it today. I said, and stay there, and don't come out until the general's gone. And so I thought he did it. So when we fell out into formation, here he is in the formation. And we're going up and down the line, and General Patton is here, and my battalion commander's with me, and we're going up, and he comes across this guy, real slow. He says, Sergeant, bust this man. And I said, sir, he's already a corporal. I mean, he's already a private. He says, make him a corporal and then bust him. You know, he was never wrong. He was always right. So that was another case. I got another one here. Now, boys, I always stop and think of this every once in a while. We had a Baptist chaplain named Chaplain Chun, and he was about this tall. His helmet covered his face just about when he had it on. And he was with us in Sicily when we were attacking a town, and we had to go up the mountain to get to the town, and we were with Darby's Rangers on that one, and at Hilo, Sicily. So while we're climbing the mountain, all the while the ships out at sea were firing on this town, and Butera was the name of the town. And it was the high ground, and you have to always take the high ground because they can see everything you're doing. So we had to take to Butera. So during the night while we're climbing the mountain, and we weren't mountain climbers, but the Darby's Rangers and us were climbing this mountain, and Chaplain Chun is with us. And everybody just cussing all the time going up this mountain. And so he would keep saying, now boys, and I never forget the answer he got to that. One of the guys said, now boys, hell, Chaplain, He says, when we get it and we die and we go up there and we go by St. Peter, he's going to say, where did you serve? And we're going to say in the infantry, and he's going to say, pass on through, you already served your time in hell. So I always remember that one. Anyway, and then being young. Well, before I do that, I do want to say something else here. You know, they talk about atheists in foxholes. I was 30 months in the combat zone, in 7 campaigns and 3 invasions, and not one time did I ever see or hear an atheist. Never. And the men that I ran across that would be wounded or killed or be laying there long that I would kneel down by them for a minute, none of them would ever have anything much more to say, help me God, or something asking the Lord for help. No atheist in a foxhole. Never saw one. I've never had anyone come to me and said, well, we were there and we would not allow a chaplain or anything around us. And I said, well, you wasn't in very good combat because you were not that way. Because I want to tell you, when the going gets tough, the tough has to get going, and you got to go. And the atheists, whatever they'll eventually come around. I believe most of them. But I just want you to know that, as far as I'm concerned, there weren't any, and I never ever ran across any. Okay. I have a note here, kind of young, and that reminds me of General Eisenhower when I met him at Casablanca, but also he visited us at Tidworth Garrison in England before the invasion, and he and Churchill and Bradley and some of them visited us, and of course we had to prepare all kinds of things for them, and for the inspection and all that they were going to do. And when the train came into Tidworth Garrison, we're all lined up there, and the generals all came out to the front of the train, and they just stood there, and we were wondering, what were they standing there for? And it turned out who they were standing there for, they were waiting for Churchill. Well, Churchill got out at the back of the train. He always liked to pull crazy things like that. He got out at the back of the train, and he was already walking among us and talking, and you know, and we weren't even called attention or anything because we never paid attention. Well, we were glad to see him, but when they found out at the front of the train that Churchill was already among us, then they called everybody to attention, and then they come up and down the line. And I was a platoon sergeant, and so when Eisenhower went right by me, and he looked at me and he says, kind of young to be a platoon sergeant, aren't you? And I said, yes, sir. He says, you lied about your age, didn't you? And I said, yes, sir. And so he says, well, he says, you know, he says, I'm from Abilene. He was from Abilene, Kansas, and that. So he talked through this, I thought that was very interesting. I got to talk to the guy that eventually even became president of the United States. And so that was General Eisenhower and kind of young. I also have a note here, who are you? We had a deal during the invasion of Normandy that we were at a town called Pont Brocard, and at Pont Brocard we had quite a battle there, and what happened is I was blinded for a while, first of all, because whenever you set up a roadblock, and which we did a lot of because our equipment, being armored, I was in the 2nd Armored Division, so I was armored infantry, so I had 5 half-tracks and anti-tank guns and wire and all that stuff, mines, we carried all of that. And so we set up roadblocks. So we set up a roadblock in front Brocard in order to keep them from coming in from the flank while the division moved on through. And so while we were doing that, they attacked at us, and the part about that was there were no tanks in that group. There were more half-tracks than anything else, but they had Red Cross stars on them that they were medic. But they weren't medics. They were all armed, and they were disguising themselves as medics, figuring that they could get into the middle of us and do something. So we had quite a firefight with them there, and so they retreated, and we knew they would be coming back. So in that interim, some guy comes up to the front where we are, and he has a camera. And I said, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm from Time Magazine." And somebody told me his name was Lindsay, and Lindsay from Time Magazine, involved in World War II. And I said, "You're an American?" He says, "Yeah." And I said, "You see that weapon right there?" I said, "Pick it up, put the damn camera down, and join us in this next fight. You're an American." He says, "I'm a reporter and I'm neutral." And I said, "Then you get the hell out of here." So I chased him away. And so he left. The only reporters that were allowed in World War II was the Army reporters, and their job was to take all kinds of pictures, and you've seen some of them. They called them Army photographs, and they were turned into division headquarters. They couldn't release them to anybody. They were given to division headquarters, and division headquarters would decide where the film would go. So that was the rule in World War II. Now, you got to have a damn guy running behind you with a camera, and you need to turn around and knock him on his butt is what you need to do. Anyway, okay. When we're in this one town here, we went out in front of the anti-tank gun, which we always do, to review, see what's out there. So I would again pull the spaghetti instead of pushing it. And I went out there with one of the sergeants, and as we went out in front of the gun, we were down, I don't know, maybe 50 yards or something, and we heard noise in the woods there, and it was Germans talking. So I had a submachine gun, and he had his carbine, and so we emptied all of our bullets into the area there where the voices were coming from. And we heard all kinds of honks and all that from them. And so we turned around and we run back because we know they would be after us. So running back, my Sergeant Cermak was a lot faster than me, so he beat me to run past the anti-tank gun. And we always kept a round in the gun ready to fire when we set up a roadblock. So as he passed the 57, he pulled the lanyard and fired the weapon. I'm still out to the right front of the gun, and the blast goes, and it blinded me. I couldn't see anything, and so I ran in. They said I ran into the building on fire, and then they pulled me out and took me to the command half-track, my half-track that I had the big radio in, and the company commander was in another town, and he was calling me, and he's saying, "What's going on?" And I said, "As soon as I could see, I'll tell you." He said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I said, "I'm blind." And so, and actually I was, and I don't know what it was, but he kept telling me, "Just sit still and your eyesight will come back." And it took maybe 20 minutes or so, and my eyesight came back from that. So I still have a blinded left eye, but that's all I got out of that, and I came out all right. So that went on. Okay. Now, I'm watching the time here. Okay, we went on then, and we went to the Rhine River, the Rohr River, the Elbe River, all of those rivers. We went to cross them and that. And at the Rohr River, well, first of all, I was wounded in St. Denis-le-Gas during the St. Lo breakthrough. And we were told to wear camouflage suits, and then they woke up and said that the enemy wore camouflage, take them off, because you'll be classified as enemy, and they'll be shooting at you. And so everybody took off their camouflage uniforms except us, because the 2nd Armored Division was already moving. And incidentally, the 2nd Armored Division during the invasion was called the Galloping Ghost. They did not reveal who we were until August of '44 in the newspapers. They released the name of the Armored Division that was in that deal of St. Lo and all that, and that was the 2nd Armored Division. And anyway, we were in camouflage. So because we were attacked by our own aircraft, and in fact, one of the planes that dived on my half track killed my driver, and I'm standing here at a ring mount 50 caliber, and he's right there, and it got him, spared me, and we had to jump out and throw our identification colors out and for the aircraft to see us, and then the aircraft, if they recognized you, would wave their wings like this. They recognized you. So and the 2nd plane never dove on us, but the 1st plane did kill my driver. But anyway, so at St. Denis of Gas, they decided that we would take care of the south end of town and somebody else take the north end of town. We took care of the south end of town. We put our anti-tank gun up and put our half tracks in a safe area because they only had 1/4-inch steel, and we had a lot of equipment on them, and we wanted to protect them. So during the night, the first night, we were told to move up to the north end of town because the enemy broke into the north end of town. So we're heading up to the north end of town, and I'm a good soldier, you know. I told the officer that he was from the regimental headquarters and ordered me to go up there and stop the enemy that are coming through. And so while we're going up there, I got to thinking, all that clanging that's going on, those are German tanks. I knew what they looked sounded like because I'd been in Africa and Sicily, so I knew what it was. And so I got to thinking, what are we doing? We have nothing to stop those tanks, and the first tank that goes around the corner, he's going to fire that cannon, because that was the rule. They always cleared the street first. And so I told everybody to get out of here and assemble back at the half track. So everybody took off, and I got ready to take off, and I made a mistake, another mistake. I was against a wall, and I couldn't go anywhere because it was too high, or I thought it was too high anyway. So I'm holding on to the wall, and I'm saying, good Lord, help me. And the first German tank came around the corner, and he fired. And the blast from the cannon raised me up on the wall with my guardian angel. I always said he had to be there. Helped me get up on top of the wall and fall on the other side. When I fell on the other side, I had a piece of fragment in my hand and one in one leg, and I couldn't walk, but I could crawl, so I crawled. And so we crawled and got together and helped in the defense of the town, but that's how I was wounded the first time. And so what happened is people would tell me, Paul, what was that tank? Was it a Tiger? Did it have an 88? I said, you think I'd stand in the middle of the street waiting to see what that tank had? I knew he had a big gun and he was going to shoot it at him. But anyway, after crawling around that night, the next day they come and to find out where I was, and they said he's laying over there and he got hit last night and he wouldn't leave, and he crawled around and set up different defensive positions, and so they flew me to England. And so while I was in England, I woke up in the hospital, and all the Americans were over here, and I was over here by myself. And there was 2 guards by my bed, 2 MPs. And I raised up and I said, what the hell's going on here? And the nurses run over there, 2 of them. They said, you're an American. I said, damn right I am, you know. And I took my dog tags out and shipped them. And I said, you never even checked it. They said, all we did was cut your leg and open and take the stuff out of your leg, and we took the stuff out of your hand. But we left you here to be interrogated because you were the enemy, because you were in camouflage. And so Of course, then I just raised hell all over the hospital. They sent me to 2 psychiatrists. One of them said, "You're crazy," and I said, "No, I'm not." So they sent me to another psychiatrist, and he said, "Well, you're not crazy." He said, "But I'm going to do you a favor." I said, "What's that?" He says, "You were in 3 invasions, so I'm sending you home." I said, "No, you're not." And he said, "What the hell is wrong with you now?" And I says, "I want to go back to my guys." He says, "You want to go back and get shot at some more?" I says, "You don't understand. We're brothers. We all work together. We all train together. We all fight together. And I'm not going to go home and be listening to the radio wondering what's happened to those guys. I want to be there with them." So he says, "You are crazy, and I'm sending you back." So he did send me back. So anyway, and the nurses wanted the camouflage uniform, so I gave it to them. And so somebody said, "You should have kept it," but what the heck would an infantryman do carrying a camouflage uniform with him all the time? Because if you're in the infantry, you can't keep anything, and you definitely wouldn't be caught with a German weapon on you by a German. You made sure that if you're going to get captured or possible, that you didn't carry a German weapon, because most of the time they just kill you right there, because they figured you killed somebody and you took that over with. So anyway, that went on, and I'm looking here again. And then we went to the Roar River, on my way back, I got back. No, that was the second time I was going up. Still the first time I was going. And we went through Belgium and Holland and into Germany, and during that time, as a young Belgian boy that joined us, and we called him Belgian, he was probably about 15, he had a dog, and he wanted to join us, so we put a little uniform on him and let him join us. And he would sleep in the foxhole with us, with the dog and all that, and we were moving pretty fast through there, and so the Belgians and the Holland people loved us and so forth, and we had we didn't have too much of our fight in Belgium or Holland. But when we got to the German border, the company commander said, "Paul, you release him. You don't take him into Germany." So I had to let him go, and I never did find out his name or anything like that. But anyway, later on, after the Siegfried Line situation, we went to the Roar River. We were going to cross the Roar River, and as we were getting ready to cross the Roar River, they decided we need to put Bangalore torpedoes in the wire and up high so they blow down and knock out any mines so the tanks could have a way to go through. So again, pull the spaghetti, so I went out there with the torpedoes and put them in the wire, in the German wire, and we put the Tetral caps on it and all that. Running back to the hole to set the charge off, and on the way back I got hit by artillery, and so I was wounded again. And so anyway, I was sent to Holland, and they were bombing Holland so bad, so I was sent to Germany, and they were weather was so bad that the plane they sent us in crashed in in a British airfield, and 4 British girls took care of us. They were the British airfield, and each one of us had 4 girls taking care of us after the plane came in on its nose, and they pulled us out of the plane. And the Americans, as soon as they found out where we were, got us out of there, because that was one of the best nights we had in the war. But anyway, I went to the replacement depot. They were real hungry there, so I went AWOL from the replacement depot, went down to the English Channel and bumped a ride back across the English Channel to get back to my outfit, and I was AWOL from the replacement depot. So I was absent without leave and court-martialed in England, but I was on my way back to the front. And on the way back across the English Channel, we got sunk by another ship hit us, and sunk the ship I was on, an LCI, and So we got a rope ladders up on the other ship, and so when I got up on there, the captain to help me get a ride across said, didn't do you any favors, because if anything had happened to you out there, you would have been a deserter from the American Army, and you would have been dishonored in the United States. And I didn't think of that. But anyway, I got back to my outfit across Germany, across Belgium, Holland, and back into Germany in time for the Battle of Bulge. The Battle of Bulge happened on the 16th, and I got there on the 22nd. We had a big fight on Christmas Day against the 2nd Panther Division at the Meuse River, and was able to defeat them, and there's a lot of stories about that. I won't go into it. And then we moved on. We went through the Rhine River, on to the Elbe River, and then on the Elbe River, is where the war sort of ended in that time. And the only thing I want to say about the Elbe River is that we couldn't get our tanks across, so we went across in boats, and we were trying to move the enemy away from the Magdeburg, where we were trying to get across and get tanks across, and we couldn't get any tank bridges made because they kept blowing them up, and we're trying to get them away from there. While we're up there, the colonel in charge of the battalion was with me, and so we're moving up, and we hear the German tanks coming after we got so far. He says, those are German tanks. I says, I know that because we don't have any tanks across the river. And he says, stop them. I said, with what? He said, with a bazooka. I said, if there's more than one tank, the one bazooka, when he fires, his place is going to be exposed, and he's going to be dead. Or the two guys are going to be dead. So he says, I don't care. He said, stop him. And he took his crew and he left, run away. And so this is the colonel, and I'm a sergeant. So I waited till he got out of sight, and I said, come on. And my guys and we retreated also, went back to the river. And of course, he raised hell with me about it, but I told him, you ran first. And I knew him when he was just a lieutenant in the United States, so I got away with that all right. We moved up to a town, and on the enemy side of the Elbe, I'm getting right at the end of it. What happened is I had a new company commander because the other one was just killed, and I had a new one. And he says, I'm going to go into that town as we're moving up. And I said, no, let me send scouts out. He said, no. So he and the executive officer went into the town. A little while he come running out, the executive officer, and he says, Captain Stryker was killed right there. And he was shot in the mouth while he was talking. And he had his mouth open, and the bullet went in here and came out over here and never destroyed his mouth. And so I got a call from the other side of the river from General Hines, and he said, let me speak to your company commander. And I said, he's dead. He said, let me speak to the executive officer. I said, he's shot in the mouth. I got his mouth bandaged up. He says, who in the hell are you? And I said, I'm Sergeant Andert. And I used to ride motorcycle for him in the United States at peacetime. And when he was a major, now he's a general. And he says, what the hell are you doing there? I said, guys like you put me here. That's right. So he said, you got to get out of there. And so we went on down to find a way to get across. And that was the day Roosevelt died, and there's a big story about that, which I won't go into. But anyway, we ended up 60 miles from Berlin. And during that time, General Simpson, our commander then, said I could be in Berlin in one night because we're only 60 miles. Eisenhower said no, because the Russians were fighting for Berlin. Two Russian armies were fighting to see who would get credit from Stalin for taking Berlin. So they were shooting each other, and Eisenhower didn't want us in the midst of that. And so we didn't go. But I didn't go either because they wanted me to take the commission. I wouldn't take it. So I said, they said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going home. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I had 132 points at that point, and that was quite a bit of points, and so I couldn't go home. And so I said, I'm going home. So they said, all right, so they sent me home. I was out of the war in June of 45, and the war wasn't over until August of 45. So I was out of World War II before the war was over in Japan, but it was over in Europe because it ended on May 9th in Europe. So I was home on June the 23rd. So anyway, and I think that maybe it's already 10 to 12. What else should we do right now? Maybe.
Well, I could listen to you all day, but I think it would be fun if some of you have questions. We have a portable mic. There are also cards and pins on each of the back tables. If you want to write a question and bring it up, we've got a few minutes for that. Ask Paul if you have any questions or if you want to say anything.
I have a here. He's the vice president of our veterans group now, and then Mr. Rule, he's also a part of our group that goes to schools and all that. We've been going to schools for I don't hear the greatest, so if somebody's got a question, we may have to have somebody else repeat it. But anybody got a question that you want to poke at us? Oh, since you're not saying anything, I'll tell you one thing. All of you need to do. Write a book. Every one of you has a story that will be helpful to somebody else if you tell them what you are experienced and what you have gone through. Regardless, if you write it and then you read it, after you write it, you know that it is important that you did that. So do it. You think it might help. I'm off anyway. Anybody got anything? I'll be here for a while and sit right over here and be happy to answer any questions you might have. And yes, ma'am.
How long were you in the Army?
I went in the Army in 1940, a year and a half before Pearl Harbor, and I got out in June 45. I went back in during the Korean War to train troops at Camp Chaffee. And so I was there for about 18 months training troops at Camp Chaffee.
I want to know what rank you were.
Yeah.
What rank you were when you left the
So I
Army?
was, call it the E7, they call it now. It was Sergeant First Class, was a platoon sergeant then in those days. And they used to call him Field First Sergeant, and they got all kinds of names for us.
All of you that are veterans know that this year we presented a plaque to all of our vets from the school and honor rolls. This month we did that for all of our faculty, staff, and to our students. Today we have a plaque that we'd like to present these three gentlemen as well to thank them for their service to our country. I've got one for Paul too, but it's kind of hidden under here, so let me grab it if I could.
I might mention this got mixed up in the papers that we passed out, but it was a letter I wrote to the Queen of England. And everybody says, well, first of all, if you don't do anything, nothing will happen. That's number one. Number two is I decided that she was 90 years old. I would tell her I knew her when she was 16. So I wrote the letter to her, and everybody said you'll never get an answer from her, but I did. She did answer me, and she sent her picture, and she everything that went with it, and so forth, and so anyway, she's
They're now dating. Have a new pen pal. So here's your plaque. Let's give it up for Paul one more time.